Hello, welcome to the Everywhere Book Fest. I want to take a minute to thank Everywhere's ASL interpreter, Brian Truitt, who you'll see there, as well as Nic, Skottie, Preeti, and Saladin for making themselves available for this. We're glad all of you could make it, and so pleased we have this unique opportunity to assemble 4 Marvel writers who represent so many different facets of our current young adult and middle grade lineup of books. I'm Lauren Bisom, editor of Marvel's juvenile publishing initiatives, including younger readers, middle grade, and young adult books across prose and graphic novels. Before we get into questions, I'm going to turn this over to the panelists to introduce themselves. In their own way, each of these writers are presenting gateways into the Marvel universe for readers of all ages, specifically younger readers or those who might not be sure the best place to start reading Marvel. They also all bring different perspectives and different areas of storytelling expertise to the Marvel universe. Nic, why don't we start with you?
I am Nic Stone, young adult and middle grade author. I am writing a Shuri series for Marvel of prose novels. She is the little sister of Black Panther, and she has been a joy to write.
Awesome. And Skottie?
My name is Skottie Young, and I currently am writing Strange Academy with artist Humberto Ramos, colorist Edgar Delgado. It's a big, fun book about magical students going to a magic school set in New Orleans. So it's really cool.
Love that one. Preeti?
Hi, I'm Preeti Chhibber. I am writing Avengers Assembly #1 Orientation, and it's about Kamala Khan kind of figuring out how to balance life and school and being a superhero, and maybe there's an evil plot or two. I don't know.
And Saladin. Oops, Saladin, can you hear me? Sorry, guys. I think we're having a few technical difficulties. Let's see. Well, I can introduce Saladin for him. Saladin is the writer of the ongoing comic and graphic novel series starring Miles Morales as well as Ms. Marvel. Hopefully, by the time we come back to questions with Saladin, he'll be able to hear us after he comes back in.
There you go.
Right. Great, Saladin. In your absence, I have introduced you, but we will come back. Is there anything you want to say about Miles Morales and Ms. Marvel real quick?
I'm sure we'll get to it.
We will. 45 minutes. All right. Thanks, guys. And to our awesome audience, this is a live session, so please feel free to submit questions throughout our conversation. And if we will even be selected for the panelists to answer at the end of our conversation. First questions. All right. Now, Nic, you've already written several works of middle grade and young adult fiction. Can you tell us a little bit about Marvel Shuri? What drew you to taking on this book as your next project?
So Preeti actually just inspired me to go grab it so people can see what it looks like. That's a thing. So it comes out on Tuesday. I saw the Black Panther film in 2018, like with the whole world. And after leaving the theater, I literally said to my partner, I have to figure out a way to be able to write a book about Shuri, the character Shuri. One of my heroes / annoying older brother is Jason Reynolds, and he did a Miles Morales prose novel. And so like ever since he did that, I've wanted to do one too, because I want to do everything Jason does. But I knew that Shuri was a person that I would want to write one day. And then I literally got an email 6 months later that was like, hey, we're doing this project. You're the person we thought of to write it. It's going to be a Shuri series. Would you be interested? And I screamed in an airport. She is I look at Shuri as my opportunity to validate my younger nerd girl, Black science geek self. And I have never had so much fun writing books. They're so fun.
And I've gotten the chance to read it because I'm one of those lucky people, and it's awesome. Skottie, Strange Academy has just started coming out in comic form with a graphic novel release coming soon. Oops, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead. I'm going to scroll back. That is for later. Skottie.
Yeah.
Strange Academy is a very unique concept, something the Marvel Universe hasn't quite seen before. What can you tell us about how the series came about?
I am a big fan of coming of age stories. I write a lot of them. I draw a lot of them, and I've always watched and read a lot of them. So I was a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer junkie, and grew up reading Generation X, and I really love stories about that period of time where we have some power but not enough power, and we don't really know what to do with it, and adults are making us do things that we are too big for us, but we also want to do things that are too big for us. It's just a lot of interesting battles that kids fight in those teen years. So for years, I've been at Marvel for almost 20 years, so I always wanted to revive Generation X, and it's always come and gone. And I drew a new X-Men series, so I did some kids in the mutant school, but I've always liked fantasy stories and magic and things like that. So one night I was sitting around, I was like, why? I feel like Marvel's such a big universe, and we've really revived the cosmic side of Marvel. We revived the X-Men side, like we've brought them back. We've done a lot of these. We've revived a lot of Asgard with Jason's run. We've done a lot of that, but one area that I think that I really wanted to get back and shine a big light on was the magical corners of the Marvel universe. So I literally just texted CB one night at like 11 o'clock at night and just said, hey, what if we just took a bunch of kids and put them in a magic school at Marvel and had Doctor Strange and Dr. Voodoo teach them? And here we are. It was as simple as that, as me being like, oh, I like to do things like that. I wonder if we could. And now we're doing it. Yeah.
I seriously think CB must get the best texts. Hopefully not all late at night.
Right.
Preeti, you've written for years as a journalist and have long been a prominent voice in the comic and publishing world. What can you tell us about how you started writing Marvel books, and specifically Avengers Assembly?
So I worked at Scholastic actually for a very long time. And then I published my first book last year, which was a Spider-Man tie-in to the Spider-Man Far From Home book, because I'm a huge Spider-Man nerd, and worked out in my favor. And then I got, like Nick, an email maybe a couple months after I decided to quit my job to write full-time that was like, hey, do you want to write Kamala Khan? Like, I've only been waiting for a character like Kamala Khan to exist my entire life because, I was like a nerdy brown girl growing up, and there were no superheroes who were like nerdy South Asian kids. And so it was basically an immediate yes. And it's middle grade, like it's like 8 to 12-year-old kind of, and illustrated. And I have the sense of humor of a 10-year-old. So it works out super well for me because I just get to write things that make me laugh and hope that it will also make the children laugh.
I mean, I sat at my desk while reading one of the passes for that book and was cackling and was pretty glad I was in an office for that. So the pictures specifically are so well done and so much funny, and their comic beat is perfect. Saladin, you started as a prose writer and penned an award-winning science fiction novel before starting your comics career. What inspired you to make the transition into comics, and how did you find yourself writing two of Marvel's biggest teen heroes?
Well, for me as a writer, I was always informed by comics, even though it took me until my 40s to actually write comics. I've had a number of lives as a writer. Before I was a novelist, I was writing and publishing poetry. And pretty much everything I've written has found things like superheroes and supernatural figures and things like that into it, even if it's sort of literary fiction or whatnot. So Marvel comics specifically really taught me to read when I was a kid. And so when they came calling with a request to do a Black Bolt book, and they didn't really know what they wanted. They just said, we want to do something with this character. I had to pick it up. It was sort of coming full circle. And I just really took to the form immediately. And that relationship just kind of exploded. And I started writing a bunch of stuff for Marvel.
It's awesome. I know it's always interesting to see the transition between novelists and comic book writers, because it is such a different form and it's really fun. I think it's a really cool thing you've done. Next question is for Nick. Back around again. As you said, Nick, Shuri releases next Tuesday. Everyone, take note, May 5th. And it represents the first in a large planned lineup of Marvel Scholastic titles that will build out a new corner of the Marvel Universe. What threat does Shuri face in your novel?
So in this novel, she is trying to save the heart-shaped herb. And what's interesting about writing Shuri is that I think because of the target audience, it's also middle grade. It's like upper middle grade. So it's like 9 to 14, I guess, is the suggested age range. But what's interesting about her is that most people who are coming to her and will come to this book are coming from the film. So I had to utilize elements that are addressed in the film, but are comic canonical. And the heart-shaped herb was a really great and kind of fun place to start. So like it's the plant that gives the Black Panther his powers. The person who's becoming Black Panther has to like ingest this plant, and then they get like the Panther prowess. And Shuri comes to discover when she is trying to make T'Challa a new Panther habit, like she's trying to make him a new suit, and she's using the essence of the heart-shaped herb to kind of add a boost to the suit. She comes to discover that the herb is dying. She goes to the field where the herb grows, and swaths of it are just kind of vanishing right before her eyes. So she leaves Wakanda and like goes on this adventure, basically trying to find out what's wrong with the herb and how she can save it. And then thereby saving the legacy of the Black Panther and Wakanda as a nation. That's like super climate changey, you know. I don't know that I can write a book without some kind of social commentary in it. So, you know, there you have it.
But it's also equal parts action adventure, which I found it to be such a fun, fast-paced read, which I loved about it.
I'm glad to hear that, because it was hard. Like I'm not like naturally an action adventure writer, so I really had to learn how to build a world that's not set in reality. You know, like it was a challenge. It was a challenge. Like Shuri is facing a challenge, and I faced a challenge writing Shuri facing a challenge.
Well,
real fun.
Reading it, you don't see the challenge in your writing, I will say.
Good. That means I did my job.
Skottie, Strange Academy has just started coming out in comic form with graphic novel releasing coming soon. What can you tease about the story and characters in Strange Academy?
We start off the series with a character named Emily Bright, and she's all of us. You know, she's from the Midwest, doesn't know a lot about the grander Marvel universe except what she sees on TV whenever there's a big crazy throwdown in New York with these spandex colored characters. And she has an affinity for magic her whole life, and she connects with it and is able to manipulate it, and ends up writing a letter to the only magician or sorcerer. She doesn't even know what to call herself. She doesn't know is she supposed to be a witch? Is she a magician? Is she a sorcerer? So that she's so out of the loop. And in the day of, you know, we live in a time where we have all the information at our fingertips, which means sometimes we have none of the information because you just can't figure it out. So she thinks that maybe one way that she could find out is to write a letter to Doctor Strange, because she sees him on TV saving the world with magic a lot. And then we enter the school, and we start meeting, characters like Zoe, who's a native to New Orleans and the great granddaughter of one of Dr. Voodoo's mentors. And we meet Desi, who's a demon from Limbo, and who's going to do a lot of learning about what boundaries are and what, you know, she's from a very different place who interacts with people very, very differently. And she sees things that other people don't see. And sometimes she can cross lines so there's, again, very, very kind of typical teenage coming of age things, but we're dealing with them with Asgardian twins and demons from Limbo, and, a kid who found a magical coat in one of his foster homes. And so there's really a big range of characters. We even have a frost giant from the other realm. So it's and one of my favorite characters is Doyle Dormammu, who's one of the probably many sons of the biggest, the Lord of the Dark Dimension, is at the school. So clearly everybody's afraid that this kid is just going to lay waste to the whole place. But we'll have to find out if that's going to be the case or not. So again, it's really a chance for me to throw these kids into all the kind of turmoil that we all went through as teenagers, but we're going to ramp it up like by 100 and throw in a lot of magic and demons and swamp cults and all types of weirdness. It's going to be fun.
I mean, I have to say Dormammu especially has probably one of the best entrances, and it's got one of those with the formats with comics, especially you kind of get a sense of someone's coming and then you turn the page and there's the reveal. And it's like my favorite thing to point to of like, this is what comics can do. This is a lot of fun.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. It is one of the most unique art forms, I think, in that we genuinely can control pacing in a way that I don't think that a lot of other forms can't, because we genuinely have something that's, when you could always see some, but if you like, when you understand how to use the page turn, it becomes like the best sword to use,
Yeah. I love that about comics. Preeti, Avengers Assembly is slated to come out this August. I'm counting down the weeks. What can readers expect from this super fun story?
A lot of kookiness. So the illustrations are by James Lancet, who does these very, very funny, like kind of doodle-esque comics more so. It's a combination of prose like Kamala's journal or screenshots of Instagram or little, snippets of comics. It was really fun to write in that way. And so it's a fun way where you're getting a first person account of this kid, this like middle schooler who is now going to a superhero school. She's going there to kind of learn how to be a better superhero, learn how to be a teammate. And she teams up with Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Dorian Green, and Squirrel Girl. And it was really fun to get to kind of, I think similarly to Skottie, like bring in all these characters and put them in a school environment, but have it be very kind of easily digestible by very young kids. And so punchiness and short snippets of plot it's been an experience writing it, because it was new to me. Like, this is not something I'd ever done before. When my editor emailed me, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'll try. And it turns out I really enjoy it. It's getting to switch between how these characters spend their time as superheroes and as kids was really great, because I think that's the one thing I really like about writing kids at this age is that you get that fantastical element, but there's that very real, like emotional element of coming of age and of having to deal with these things within that context.
Right. I mean, at the heart of it, it's kind of them forming their core identities, but at the same time, they have two identities. So how do you
balance?
That? Yeah. So, what every middle schooler has to deal with.
Yeah, plus saving the world.
Saladin. A couple graphic novel volumes of your Miles Morales series and your Miss Marvel series have released thus far, with more to come soon. What can you share about what's happening with these two characters in the Marvel Comics universe?
Yeah, so I'm kind of shepherding two of the young faces of Marvel, the 21st century diverse teen heroes, and in the comics world at least, and it's pretty fun taking them through some kind of superhero paces that are they haven't faced yet as they get a little bit older and they grow up a little bit. Both heroes are sort of getting big debuts in other media. There's another Spider-Verse movie coming. There's a Ms. Marvel TV show on the way. And so those will serve as sort of introductions of these characters or furtherings of these characters for a whole new audience. But in the comics world, we're sort of taking them, they've been around for a few years in the comics world. And so we're sort of taking them through some of the rites of passage that superheroes have gone through. So our current book is The Magnificent Ms. Marvel, right? Rather than just Ms. Marvel, she's gained a superlative, and she's gone through the familiar Marvel rite of passage of dealing with a hostile suit. She's gone to a foreign planet and a alien planet, and came back with a cool battle suit that, of course, had to turn. Maybe evil's not quite the right word, but turn nasty on her, and that's become the character Storm Ranger, who's going to become a pretty prominent villain for Kamala. Sort of a AI-controlled homicidal battle suit, and Kamala's also been dealing with some stuff. Currently, all the teenage Marvel heroes are dealing with being outlawed, as the storyline is called, as the government has made teen heroes against the law. And so Kamala, Miles, and a bunch of other folks are tangling with that. On the Miles side of things, Miles has been dealing with a lot of family business. The book, as I've written it this past couple years, has been a really family-oriented book. It's been about Miles in Brooklyn, in his community, and there's been a lot of kind of cool supervillain threats and stuff, but it's been very much about that dynamic, and especially with his Uncle Aaron the Prowler, and that stuff's all getting ramped up big time. Folks who dug Aaron in the Spider-Verse film, I think will like where the comics are right now. But also in the family world, I guess the biggest news is that Miles is in the comics, at least now, a big brother. He has a little sister, Billy Mariana Morales, who was just born a couple of issues ago, and he's already had a babysitting incident where he's got to save her from a mutant crocodile in the sewer, and it's been a lot of fun to take these characters sort of to the next place after their creators did such a great job creating them.
Nice. Yeah, they're really fun. I just read your last 2 issues over the weekend, and they were fun reads. Right. Skottie, well, you have quite a few writing credits to your name. Many Marvel fans know you as the artist of the spectacular Marvel series, The Wonderful World of Oz, and famous Young variants. What is it like to be behind the keyboard and tasked with building out a whole new world with Strange Academy?
It's awesome. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be finally. About 10 years ago, I started writing as well, and writing and drawing, and I wrote and drew Rocket Raccoon and Groot, and launched that series for a while, and wrote Deadpool for a while, and I love having spent so many years just drawing, and then jumping over the other side of the line and doing both, and now most of my time spent either doing covers and writing for other artists, which. The best thing for me is I get to experience collaboration. I get to I find a new love for collaboration. As the artist, I'm kind of the last end of the chain, from creation to the writing to you getting it, and then you hand it to me, and it's kind of like outside of it being colored and lettered, like the storytelling part of it's kind of I'm the end of that train as the artist. So the collaboration nature for me didn't necessarily always feel super like we were really chopping it up back and forth. On the writing side, because I felt like that as the artist, I'm super the opposite way with my collaborators, where I love sending things off. We have chats about it. We check in before I start. What are you looking for? What are you thinking? Where's your feeling about this? What do you feel like drawing for the next 6 months? I might have a great story to tell I might think it's great for the next 6 months, but that doesn't matter if the person who's going to be spending 30, 40 days at a time creating it for the next 7-8 months of their life, if they're not in it, it's really not fun. So being able to do that, and then also Alberto Ramos on Strange Academy, I write 3 sentences, and the stuff that he sends back, I'm like, oh my God. There's a scene, I mentioned the magic coat. We have a character named Calvin, and this is a perfect example about what it's like to be on the writer's side now as an artist. I'm working with Alberto Ramos, who was one of my favorite artists when I was in high school, right? So I'm writing a book for him now. And we created a character named Calvin, and he found a magical coat at one of his foster homes, and the coat has a little bit of a life of its own. And so I just wrote a scene where Calvin, all the other kids are studying in the kind of mess in the rec room in the dorms, and Calvin's playing video games. And that's all I wrote. I was like, all the other kids are really into their homework and they're really focused. Excuse me. And Calvin is playing PlayStation. And that was it. and then the page that I got back was everybody else studying and Calvin playing PlayStation against his coat. His coat was also playing PlayStation.
Amazing.
And I was like, oh, like he took what I did and plussed it up 5 times. And that was like, oh my gosh, I never got to experience, because after I got done with it as the artist, it was done. Like the colorist was cool, but even after that, if you've done 25 issues, you already know what it's going to look like because everything's internalized. But getting to see like a small idea become a really big, fun idea and snowball that into future story plot points that I would not have thought about had he not done that with the coat. And that's in issue 2, so I spoiled something for issue 2. But,
no, just whet our appetite.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about that. That's what it feels like now to be on the other side of writing. Is as an artist, I appreciate how much hard work goes into it. It's a Herculean task that you take on every month. And so now that I'm on the other side, there's a real deep appreciation for the hard work that goes into it. So,
I mean, it's awesome that you get to go from one side to the other. I can imagine that it's nice to switch between the two sides of your brain.
It's nice to have a new challenge. Again, I started making monthly comics at Marvel in 2001. So, and at some point, things become, just like, well, okay, this is work, and I do it, and boom, 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 and you're just kind of pushing levers and pulling, and to like halfway through my career, jump into the other side. It's exciting and it's a brand new challenge, and every day is kind of scary again, and that's fun. And I think fun things come out of being a little nervous. So yeah, it's nice.
Awesome. Speaking of challenges, Nic, you started writing young adult novels, and then recently your first middle grade came out. What is it like to write for the different age groups? Do you see a lot of differences?
Yeah, I can't cuss in middle grade novels. That's one thing. There's a lot that I can't put in the book, which is good. It's good to be a little bit more limited. I will also say that middle grade is just a lot more fun. There are good people in the middle grade space. And I think there's also something really exciting and fun and like still very wide-eyed, like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about being 9 to 12. So getting to write Shuri at 13 versus, if I was writing her at 16, I'd be writing completely different books. Like her concerns would be different. The things that she cares about would be different. I think that there would probably be less settledness in just being a bit awkward. Like there's just so much that you can do in the middle grade space that I can't do in the young adult space. So it's interesting. There's like pros and cons on each side. I just wish I could draw. Skottie, like, let's get together. You could teach me how to do this, because I'm like, it would be so cool. So I think I'm the only person in here right now who's doing just straight up prose. There are no pictures at all in this book. The one exception here is there's a pair of maps.
Oh, cool.
They're so cool. But like
Maps
that's the only
best.
Drawing in here. There's nothing
Right.
else. Everything else is just words, right?
Right.
So having to describe everything in a way that will appeal to like a 9 to 14-year-old, I think probably was the greatest challenge of writing this book. And I think it would have been, I know if I'd been writing young adult, it just would have been like longer. But yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun writing middle grade. And this is in this like weird kind of upper middle grade. So it's like lower YA. It's in this kind of gray space where there need to be more books. Anyway,
I was going to say, but important.
Mm-hmm. I was like, we're just
a book for every reader.
I'm not gonna get on that soapbox right now.
No, it is a book for every reader, and they can jump from like Preeti's younger middle grade to Shuri older grade, middle grade, to Skottie's YA, to Saladin's, and it's really great because you just kind of create a whole roadmap between our characters.
Absolutely.
Preeti, you transitioned from being a journalist, which is such a different medium, to an author in the community that you've been active for so many years. What was that like?
Super weird. It's really weird. It's it's still really strange. You know, I worked in publishing for over a decade, and you know, it's that kind of millennial side hustle life to also be, you know, writing on the internet for money at the same time. So it was all of these things that I was writing about and talking about, and publishing is, you know, kind of marketing these books, and you're just always in it. But you're not the creator. You're talking about it. You're I mean, not judging, but you know, you're an editor. You're thinking about what works and what doesn't. And now on the writing side, I have so much appreciation for these, like, when you send a pass off to an editor, it's just, oh God, sheer anxiety. I'm so sorry.
That's scary.
But it's been fun. It's been fun because it's, you know, all these authors I have work with for so long now.
Preeti, I think you might be cutting out a little bit.
Oh,
Prose.
am I back?
Oh, there you're back.
You're
You're
back.
back.
Wait a second.
I don't know where I was, but that's okay. Basically, just it's really great, and I like it a lot, and I'm having a really good time doing it.
I mean, I think that sums it up really nicely. Saladin, as mentioned before, you have a large body of prose fiction work, including an acclaimed novel in addition to your growing comics portfolio. What can you tell about writing for these two disciplines?
Well, yeah, it's quite different. And I guess the big thing for me, I was actually kind of a bit stuck as a prose writer when Marvel called. And so, you know, not only was it sort of a dream call because, you know, I've been reading Marvel comics since I was tiny, but it was like, oh, yes, let me try something different because I was working on my still not yet done sequel to my fantasy debut. And what was really liberating, I think, for me when I started working on comics was the kind of thing that Skottie was talking about earlier, was the collaboration. You know, it's really invigorating when you're writing a novel, you know, particularly in an adult length novel. It's, you know, you're sitting there in a room, you and that thing for a year all by yourself, basically, wrestling this giant, you know, 100,000 word thing. And even with a back and forth with an editor, it's still a pretty, it's not collaboration. It's a very solitary thing. And when you're creating comics, you know, not even bringing into it, you know, inking and coloring and lettering and all that stuff, just you and the line artist, it's so much more energizing to work with somebody else and to be doing a back and forth that, you know, you come up with an idea, you send it off to them, they come up with something else, send it back to you, and it's and it just keeps the juices flowing. So I kind of haven't looked back a lot. I mean, the other thing I work in some is TV, but that also has this kind of collaborative aspect, and I think that's really for me giving me a second life as a writer.
That's great. I think we have just enough time for a last kind of more rapid fire bit of questions. So go first. Nic, what's your favorite part about writing Shuri as a character?
All of the really fun, ridiculous science research I get to do. I can 100% explain Einstein's theory of relativity now. I can explain electromagnetism. I know how thermodynamics work. Cybersecurity is a new area of almost expertise. Like I've learned so much just in writing this one character, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Skottie, what are you most excited for with Strange Academy?
Oh man. For it to start coming out again, for this whole apocalypse to start ramping itself down. No, I'm excited for everybody to get to know these kids the way that Umberto and I get to know them. I mean, it's not very often that you get to work on a comic that is inside the Marvel universe, and almost every character that you that's in the book is brand new. So our entire main cast of kids are all brand new characters. So we're getting to know them, and it's already exciting to see people starting Twitter accounts with their favorite character from one issue, so I'm going to learn I'm going to learn. I'm not going to take up all the time, but yeah, I'm going to learn about these as we go along too. So it's going to be fun. That's what I'm excited about.
You've had so much time to nicely sit with them.
Yes. Yeah.
Saladin, what's your favorite thing about writing Miles Morales and Miss Marvel as characters?
Oh gosh, for me, it's really fulfilling something that, as a young reader, I wish I'd had, as some of the other guests have said. I really, I'm 44 years old. I was reading Marvel comics, I don't know, 35 years ago, almost 40 years ago, started reading them. And I latched on to every brown character, every character with a different kind of name, every kind of character, who looked different than the typical hero. And we've come to an era where two of the most exciting heroes at Marvel right now really embody that kind of diversity. And so being able to kind of tell those stories, and then to go, God willing, we can do this again one day, go to conventions and signings and stuff, and meet everyone from little kids who are dressed up like Miles to old, old, I don't want to say older, but older than me, Pakistani women who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this character exists. That's special. So both of those characters will keep a place in my heart even after I go on to do other things, I think.
Nice. Preeti, those characters plus Squirrel Girl feature heavily in Avengers Assembly. What are your favorite things about that threesome? Oh no, we can't hear you. No. This is going to be good. They're hilarious. They're funny. They're all individuals. Am I coming close?
What if she talks, but I just make up what I think she's saying?
I mean, yeah, that will work. You haven't read the book.
I like it.
I would definitely slip up on that one for the young audience.
Oh no. Preeti, do you want to go out and come back in time for questions, which I think we're about to start? Yeah? Okay. Awesome. So right now, we're going to transition to some questions from our audience. The first one is from Brooke Glasener. It sounds like some of you have already written your dream characters. Is there another character who would be your holy grail character to work on? Preeti, since you're back, I'll let you go first. No.
Oh, wait. I'm not going to tell you what I did, which was that I muted the mic by accident.
No. Well, but perfect timing. What is your holy grail character?
I mean, my holy grail character is like, it's not necessarily kidlit. I like mid-20s Peter Parker, doesn't have his stuff together. He's just a disaster because I relate so heavily to it. So that is my holy grail character.
Nice. How about you, Saladin?
I unmuted my mic. It's funny because people ask that often, and I've had the chance to really write, at least for little bits here and there, pretty much every character I'd want to, at least a Marvel. And I think the one thing, if I were going to tell a longer story with a character, kind of despite all my far leftiness, I think it would be Captain America, actually. I'd love to take a long spin with Steve someday.
Awesome. And you, Nick?
I would love to see that. So that would be awesome. I would love to see Saladin writing Captain America. There's a trio that I would love to do adult prose, an adult prose trilogy. And it's going to sound ridiculous, but it's Valkyrie, Nick Fury, and Monica Rambeau.
Yes!
And, oh my gosh, it would be a dream that I intend somehow to make come true. Because hey, why not?
That's awesome.
Absolutely. I love the idea of them being adult novels too.
Yeah,
how about you, Skottie?
Some grown-ups.
Yeah.
I would like to steal Saladin's job. I think Miles is such an awesome character. I love young Spider-Man. Obviously, there's a trend in my work over the years of that, but I'm really drawn to Miles, and I think that would be just a blast to add to that mythos of that character. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you.
Do we have another question? Here we go. This one's from Todd Burrows. Lauren, for me. Is there a team of editors that work with the authors to provide a general direction for the Marvel Universe in terms of books, graphic novels, movies, and television shows? I mean, honestly, I think these creators can speak to that just as easily as me. There are Marvel Universe offices are really divided into a bunch of the same characters. So there's the Spider-Man office headed by Nick Lowe. There's the Captain America office, and then there's the Avengers office. Tell me if I'm getting it wrong, because I will admit I'm on the children's side, so I get to sit on my own little.
I think Avengers.
Yeah.
Avengers and Captain America are all kind of in the Avengers and Captain America, kind of Marvel heroes are that side. Fantastic Four. Yeah, then the X offices, Spidey office, and then there's kind of a special projects kind of hub.
Right. And then I get to come in and just like look at everything that is remotely for a younger audience and kind of try and like grasp at it.
Right.
Like lurk behind and bother editors and be like, can I read that yet? Is it ready for me? So, and then get to edit some fun things on the side that are just for children.
That's awesome.
Next question, if we have 3 more minutes. All right, this one is from Noah Amercy. What was your first comic? Who wants to go first? How about you, Skottie?
Mine was Mad Magazine. That was my first comic. You guys can see that. I started reading Mad Magazine and Archie. That was my first stuff there. But my first Marvel comic was an issue of Daredevil. I cannot even know the number. It came in one of those grab boxes that like the Christmas catalog used to sell. It was just like Marvel getting rid of inventory. So like there was Alf comics that like Marvel used to publish Alf comics. And I have one with a Bill Sienkiewicz cover on it, which is bonkers. But it was an issue of Daredevil where like he got killed by Typhoid Mary, like she threw him off a bridge or something. I can't remember. I'm sure somewhere out somebody that's watching this is gonna be like, it's Daredevil, blah blah. That was the first Marvel comic I remember reading and being very confused and wanting to know more because I was like, what's this number mean? Where's the story? Why is it ended? I was confused by it because I was so used to reading Mad Magazine where it was just, gags and punches and things like that. Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
My first comic ever was Garfield. I used to have like the big fat giant Garfield comic books. Like they would just take basically everything that was in the Sunday paper. They would make this compendium. I had so many versions of it, like all of these different versions of it. Marvel, it was a Spider-Man. I do not remember. I think I was in like 3rd grade, and it was a Spider-Man where he was encountering Venom. And just like Skottie, I was so confused. Like I had no idea what was going on. And it wasn't until a few years later when I started playing Spider-Man on Sega Genesis that like things began to come together. Like I watched X-Men and Spider-Man religiously every day after school, the cartoons. But it took me coming through the video game to like come back to the comics because like I was just like, well, I don't know what this is. Let me go do something else. But yeah, it was a Spider-Man Venom thing.
I mean, everything is an access point. How about you, Saladin?
I think that the first comic book, like as opposed to like say a comic strip in the paper, was a Conan comic book, and it was like really graphic violence for the comics code at least, and scantily clad people and monsters. And I just remember picking it up, and I mean, I have only visual impressions of this from when I was probably about 4 or something like that, maybe even 3. And I think one of my uncles had left it over my grandma's house. And this is in the era where you could buy comics at like a supermarket or whatever. So just regular working guys like my uncle would pick up stuff like that. And I think it was a couple of years after that I really like read comics and got into them. And weirdly enough, the first one I can really remember really getting into it, I was probably too young when I read it, was God Loves, Man Kills. which was one of the first Marvel graphic novels and an X-Men story with pretty intense stuff in it.
Nice. And you, Preeti, our last one.
Oh man, I grew up on like Archie, Far Side, Garfield, all of that. Like
Yes.
any like cape stuff was through my older brother, and it was just
Yes.
Oh, wow.
You're so small on my screen. I had to get so
No.
close to it. I was like, oh, but no, any cape stuff was through my older brother, and so it was like literally what I could steal out of his room and like what I could get my hands on. And I was always so nervous reading it because it was his that I cannot remember any of them except like the death of Superman, which I read way too young and had no understanding of what was going on. It wasn't until I was much older and like kind of had to learn how to read comics that I could get into them. But that was like way later.
Great. And I think we're at time, guys. That concludes this panel. All books that we talked about are available via the links at everywherebookfest.com. So you guys should definitely pick them up. Thanks again to our authors and our ASL interpreter, Brian. And thank you everyone for coming to Marvel's Hero of Tomorrow panel at the Everywhere Book Fest. Bye.